Clint Walker truly hated him more than anyone. In 1968, on an Arizona film set, a strange incident occurred. Clint Walker walked off after just 37 seconds of dialogue with his co-star and never returned. The crew froze in stunned silence. The director panicked, and the studio had to halt production for 3 days just to negotiate. Clint's response was simple. He'd rather be unemployed than act with him for another second. That was the depth of hatred Walker, known for his calm demeanor, felt toward a colleague. But his struggles didn't end there. During Hollywood's most turbulent years, Walker clashed with more than one difficult co-star. One screen icon carried himself as if he were a pharaoh, entering sets like they were his personal temple. Another actor once played a cruel prank, instructing the crew to oil Walker's face so he would appear blurry on camera. The most terrifying, however, was a leading man who drank heavily on set and treated co-stars like punching bags to practice realism. One of these men was Burt Lancaster, the self-appointed teacher of the world. Walker confided to close friends that out of all the screen legends he met, Lancaster exhausted him the most. Lancaster was undeniably a legend, but his brilliance came with a flaw. He compulsively lectured and instructed others, especially Walker. Every time Walker stepped into a scene, Lancaster's hand would land on his shoulder. "Let me show you, Clint." He'd begin adopting the authoritative tone of a senior mentor. He'd critique his breathing, his gaze, and his emotional expression, insisting that every young actor was a student in Hollywood, classroom in which he was the teacher. Lancaster's interference extended to every detail how Walker held reins, walked, moved his mouth, or even breathed. His fear of being overshadowed made it worse. Whenever the director praised Walker's performance, Lancaster would intervene, adjusting camera angles or demanding needless retakes. One day, his arrogance crossed the line, transforming him from mentor to contemptible figure. During a climactic scene, Walker's character broke down emotionally. The camera tracked slowly, capturing a raw, subtle, and powerful performance that moved everyone on set. The director called cut. "Superb, Clint. That's the best take I've seen in years." Over 40 people applauded. Then, unbelievably, before the director could leave his chair, Lancaster stepped forward. He stood exactly where Clint had been, hands on his hips, and reenacted the entire scene, astonishing everyone on set. When he finished, Lancaster looked straight into the camera and arrogantly said, "You did it wrong." This is how a professional actor does it. Clint stared, unblinking, unable to comprehend what the man was doing. Then he replied, "Is that so? Well, I didn't know that," and chuckled. "If I needed a teacher, I'd have gone to acting school. I came to Hollywood to be an actor. I don't need a guy like you lecturing me." Lancaster froze mid-performance, his usual arrogant confidence replaced with pale fury and shock. Being publicly humiliated by a young actor in front of the entire crew was something he had never experienced. Unable to accept it, he gritted his teeth, turned, and shouted at the director, "This take is ruined. I will not work another minute in this unprofessional atmosphere." He didn't wait for an answer, walked straight to his private car and left immediately. From that day on, Walker and Lancaster never worked together, never shared a project, and never exchanged a greeting again. That was how Lancaster personally destroyed a professional relationship. But Lancaster wasn't the only Hollywood star who bossed his colleagues. Walker soon faced someone even more formidable, Steve McQueen, the king of dirty tricks and master of light manipulation. In 1960s Hollywood, filmmakers called him the light thief, a nickname Walker said McQueen earned effortlessly. McQueen didn't need to try to be the center of attention. His cold calculation and survival instincts made him a unique presence. He instinctively knew where the lens was, how the light hit, and exactly how to move to dominate the frame. Many co-stars recalled that the moment the director yelled, "Action!" McQueen shifted subtly to redirect light from their faces, pushing them into shadow, ensuring no one shone brighter than him. It didn't stop there. He made the camera crew absurd demands, adjusting angles to appear taller and manipulating, lighting whenever acting alongside another handsome man. That bad habit gave rise to an unofficial Hollywood concept known as the McQueen method, doing anything to make a colleague look worse, just to highlight the brilliance of the king of light stealing. Clint Walker, with his calm presence and imposing physique, was the only actor who truly threatened McQueen. Walker didn't need to dominate the frame, but his sheer good looks were enough to unsettle the light thief. From the moment he first faced Walker, McQueen decided he had to crush that aura. A silent war began. In shared scenes, McQueen acted like a second director, constantly watching the light, observing positions, and inviting Walker to switch places for a better angle. Every move had the same goal: push Walker to the edges of the light, making him look pale and washed out. McQueen's manipulation extended beyond positioning. He instructed his personal assistant to meddle with wardrobe, creating subtle folds or wrinkles in Walker's jacket to diminish his on-screen presence while McQueen shone brighter. The most extreme tactic involved asking the makeup artist to apply a thin layer of oil to Walker's face so that strong lighting would cause glare. It's making him hard to film and appear out of control. In one fight scene, McQueen demanded the director increase the light on my face by 2 stops, reduce Clint by 1, or I'm leaving the film. The result was striking. McQueen appeared sharp and dominant, while Walker's face was submerged in shadow, a mere silhouette overshadowed by the blinding light. Walker's dislike turned into outright hatred. In later interviews, he would respond with visible loathing, insisting he would never work with McQueen again, and forbidding any mention of his name. The battle between McQueen and Walker ended with a lifelong enmity. But if McQueen was intense, it wasn't Hollywood's worst. Walker soon faced someone even more controlling: Yul Brynner, the bald man obsessed with height and the infamous cut hat rule. According to Walker, 1960s Hollywood was brutal, but Brynner brought unparalleled pressure. He craved absolute dominance on set and in life. Every frame had to declare his superiority. He must appear the biggest, tallest, and most authoritative. Directors had to comply. No one could wear higher heels, stand closer to the camera, or wear a tall hat. Violate one rule, and Brynner would immediately stop acting. Not every set could be easily controlled. On one Western, Brynner faced a silent threat: Clint Walker. A true cowboy, burly and tall, with a calm, commanding presence, Walker naturally drew attention. In a scene set in the barren West, Walker walked out wearing a wide-brimmed cowboy hat. The crew nodded in approval. The lighting was perfect. The costume was authentic, till Yul Brynner walked in. He stopped about 5 meters from Walker, his dark eyes fixed on the hat with pure hatred. Without hiding his annoyance, he called over the wardrobe supervisor. "Have him cut it down to centimeters." The crew was speechless. No one asked why. Everyone understood. Walker's hat was taller than Brynner's, overshadowing the bald emperor's authority. The trembling wardrobe supervisor complied, and Brynner stood tall in the middle of the set, arms crossed, chin tilted arrogantly, ignoring everything else. When Walker returned wearing the cut-down hat, almost ridiculous in appearance, he remained composed. He didn't look at Brynner, and that silence became the start of a psychological game. In scenes without direct dialogue, Walker would turn his back to Brynner. When Brynner talked or gave orders to the director, Walker would be busy petting his horse or chatting privately with a lighting technician. He constantly positioned his broad shoulders between Brynner and any nearby actor, making Brynner feel invisible and forcing him to tiptoe slightly to see the person he wanted to command. Since Brynner forbade high heels, Walker exploited natural terrain, standing on higher patches of dirt during breaks, so Brynner always had to look up to him. When things escalated, Brynner yelled, "A guy like you will never be famous." Walker sneered in response. "So what? The audience will choose who the star is. What about you? You had to cut my hat to look taller." That's pathetic. Cut hat incident ended with a simple truth: power doesn't always defeat presence. Yul Brynner, who believed he was the center of the universe, felt small in the presence of a calm cowboy. Yet, Walker had never truly feared Brynner because, after Brynner, he faced someone entirely different. A man who didn't fight for light, height, or camera position, but for endurance. Clint Walker was all too familiar with Marvin, the alcoholic cowboy with a passion for real brawls. Marvin walked onto sets like a ghost from the Pacific battlefield. His gestures, gaze, and scrutiny carried the aura of a man about to go to war. His philosophy was simple yet brutal. Real pain produces real emotion. Marvin called it the Marvin method, a dangerous mix of method-acting extremism and the roughness of a former Marine. On set, he was a nightmare, with 3 habits that terrified the crew: acting without warning, bursting into laughter when a co-star fell, and drinking alcohol between takes. The drunker he got, the more aggressive he became. That day's script called for a barroom brawl, perfect territory for Marvin to target Walker, concerned for safety. The director repeatedly warned Marvin and Walker to take it easy, but Marvin just sneered and laughed, his breath thick with whiskey. "We're doing it for real, kid. The audience doesn't pay to see fake fighting," he hissed. Clint reluctantly nodded. The director raised his hand, and everyone held their breath, waiting for the word action. Marvin couldn't wait. Before the director's arm even dropped, he shot forward like an arrow. There was no yell, no intimidating stomp, only raw speed and brute force. Bam. A piece of the saloon window shattered. Dust billowed in the hot light, and the set fell silent. The only sound, the pounding of hearts, and the camera rolling. Clint stumbled, spitting out wood dust, while Marvin stood a few feet away, hands on hips, laughing. "The audience loves real, right? Do it again, Clint. One more time." Clint turned slowly, his calm presence terrifying. "I'm not in this movie to be your punching bag," he said. The air froze. The director gasped, the crew looked down, and Marvin's smile froze, choked off by Clint's composure. That night, amidst scattered beer cans backstage, Marvin still wouldn't admit defeat. He approached Clint from behind, tapping him lightly on the shoulder. "You're a big guy, Clint," he whispered, voice menacing. "But remember this. In a movie, the one who acts first wins." After that harrowing encounter, the 2 men officially became enemies. Walker finished his remaining scenes, communicating only through the director and avoiding Marvin entirely. For Clint, Marvin's enjoyment of another person's pain was an unacceptable moral flaw. Immediately after the film wrapped, Walker made a clear request: never cast him in a project with Lee Marvin again. Marvin, despite his reckless reputation, never successfully challenged Walker. For the first time, he realized that some people his madness couldn't subdue, and he made himself look pathetic. He continued his brilliant career, but always avoided projects that included Walker. But Marvin was only the first test. Behind the next set door awaited another storm knot, a drunken lunatic. Not a man obsessed with physical pain, but a legend who believed all of Hollywood should bow to him. A man who considered his co-stars beneath him, unworthy of sharing the same frame. That man was John Wayne. Clint Walker once said that if 1960s Hollywood had one figure capable of changing the entire set's energy, it was Wayne to Walker. He was more than just the symbol of the Western genre. John Wayne was so powerful that he could interfere with production, even having actors replaced if he wished. Behind the scenes, he was also known for a colossal ego, making many colleagues wary. He believed no one matched him in the cowboy genre, and frequently criticized young actors for lacking grit. But the group that provoked him the most were actors who were too handsome. In his eyes, good looks were unnecessary. Men should excel at riding horses, not looking pretty. Clint Walker, a calm steel tower with a quiet demeanor, fell squarely into that category. The conflict began, one stifling morning on the Arizona set. Wayne stared at the monitor where Walker was rehearsing, his gaze scrutinizing and filled with dissatisfaction. In a heavy voice, he declared, "Clint Walker isn't tough enough. He acts like a rusty machine. You lack grit." The message was relayed by a young production assistant, hands shaking as he delivered it. The crew held their breath, expecting confrontation. But Walker merely chuckled to himself. "Lack grit," he thought. "Tell him to look at himself first, Wayne." Sensitive to any challenge to his image, slammed his coffee cup on the table, grinding his teeth so violently that his makeup had to be reapplied 3 times. He wanted control over everything: who stood where in the frame, which angles made him look most imposing, and which actors were worthy of sharing the spotlight. In his eyes, Walker too tall, Too handsome was a casting mistake. Wayne pressured the director to reduce Walker's close-ups and pushed him to the edges of the frame. Have him stand 3 steps further away. The frame will be more balanced, he demanded. The director, familiar with Wayne's erratic temper, complied reluctantly. That afternoon, the two men stood near each other in a scene. Wayne walked over, acid in his voice. You should be grateful to be standing next to someone like me. You greenhorn, Clint calmly replied. You're wrong. Duke, I don't need to stand next to anyone to prove I'm a man. It was not a challenge, but a statement. A firm refusal to submit to the power Wayne believed unassailable. From that day on, Walker avoided Wayne completely, refusing further conversation or patronage. The incident ended like a slammed door, leaving behind a bruised ego and tense silence for the rest of the film. But John Wayne was only a stopover. Hollywood had another test waiting, Charlton Heston, the Pharaoh. More than just an epic film icon, Heston carried himself as if he were royalty. Walker, nearly 2 meters tall, possessed the attributes Heston coveted: good looks, calm composure, and natural command of attention. Tensions flared during a screen test. As Walker entered, the room seemed to shift. People whispered about his height. Within 3 seconds, Heston, examining his makeup in the corner, targeted Walker. He measured him silently from boots to face, then turned to the director. Rebuild the set. Raise the platform right now. The crew was startled. The scene required no technical changes. When a young assistant asked why, Heston snapped, just do it. Don't ask questions. Still unsatisfied, he pointed at Walker. A guy nearly 2 meters tall is better suited to be a background guard than acting with me. Every word of the insult reached Walker loud and clear. Walker maintained his composure. The entire audition room held its breath, expecting an explosion, a retort, an anger worthy of the public humiliation. But he simply said, "No need, Mr. H, I mean." His pale blue eyes met Heston's. No need to raise the stage. Calmly, he extended his hand and lifted a metal folding chair Heston often used to watch supporting actors. I will act this scene while sitting. Suddenly the balance shifted. Even seated, Walker was taller than almost everyone present. Heston froze, neutralized for the first time. And Walker hadn't uttered a single insulting word. In the following days, the tension continued. During dialogue scenes, Heston tried to make Walker uncomfortable, demanding water, makeup changes, or speaking loudly to distract him. Walker remained patient, never complained. His calm only infuriated Heston further. He couldn't provoke a public outburst, which he had hoped would justify removing his rival. In the end, Walker prevailed, maintaining dignity and control. But there was no time to savor the victory. Waiting ahead was a new type of challenge, James Coburn. A man dangerous in a different, more unpredictable way. Coburn wasn't just an actor. He was a collector of gestures and voices. According to Walker, Coburn had a strange habit of imitating anyone who caught his eye. Colleagues became his material, and Walker, with his distinct professional style, was a favorite target. Coburn would mimic his sneer, his slow walk, even his quiet, deliberate speech. Despite repeated warnings from the director, Coburn ignored them, delighting in teasing and disrupting the set. One night, after 14 hours of exhausting work, the crew was ready for a tense psychological scene. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the director's signal, when Coburn decided to escalate. He stepped out among the technical crew, mimicking Walker's posture and voice. I want a cup of coffee. Strong, no sugar, and hurry up, he whispered, exaggerating the hurry up with a wink. The group erupted in laughter. Coburn continued, mocking Walker's lines. Look at this guy. Every line you speak is like a copy of mine. I tried to come up with a unique line, but you took it first. Laughter roared again, and Coburn assumed he had one. Walker's face went pale, his gaze locked on Coburn. What the hell are you doing, you bastard? He yelled, holding the stare for 10 seconds before turning and walking away, leaving everyone stunned. Coburn, blind to his impact, assumed it was a failed joke. The next morning, Walker's representative made a call. I don't need to read any script with Coburn's name on it anymore. Leave that message for anyone who asks if I will work with him. There was no public fight. Their intertwined careers, part of the golden age of Western cinema, were severed over a single malicious joke. Coburn continued his impulsive, outspoken ways, breaking rules and asserting dominance whenever he pleased, unaware that his excessive self-confidence alienated everyone around him. Despite his talent, he lost not just colleagues or roles, but the opportunity to work alongside someone who could have been a great partner. People thought Walker had already faced enough difficult personalities, but Hollywood still had more tests in store. Clint Walker faced yet another test, one different from the reckless, manipulative, or domineering personalities he had already endured. 8. Kirk Douglas, the master of psychological games with co-stars. While some actors want attention through presence or talent, Douglas preferred a subtler, insidious method, frame cutting. As the camera prepared to roll, Douglas would adjust his position by just half a step, enough to claim the center of the frame, subtly diminishing Walker's presence. "He's too big," Douglas would whisper with a sly, professional smile. He breaks the composition. The audience needs to clearly see who the center is. Walker, adjusting props, heard it all. His fingers clenched white not in anger, but from a cold, controlled fury. This wasn't criticism of his craft. It was an attempt to rewrite reality so Douglas could shine alone. Douglas, satisfied with his manipulation, smiled as if to say, "You think you deserve the spotlight. I decide who is seen." The next challenge came after the scene. Douglas hinted again at Walker needing to stand away from the main star. Calmly, decisively, Walker responded with a deep, unshakable voice. A decent man wouldn't try to undermine others. Douglas, for once, had no comeback. Someone had confronted his arrogance head-on. From that day forward, Douglas kept his distance. Walker neither sought his approval nor engaged him outside the script. They filmed their scenes, but the personal connection was gone. In later interviews, Walker said, "I respect the craft. I just don't respect those who want to cut others' roles to make their own look bigger." The film was a hit, but their underlying tension never dissipated. They never worked together again, never shared a frame at awards or parties. Douglas became a reminder that fame and trickery couldn't always overpower professionalism. The frame-cutting incident remained a whispered Hollywood story, a subtle battle of power, ego, and dignity. Looking at all of Clint Walker's conflicts, it's clear that these were not just personal disagreements or ego clashes. Hollywood's golden age was a battlefield where light, presence, and control dictated survival. Relationships could shatter over a sarcastic remark, a camera angle, or even a hat trimmed by 2 centimeters. Many of the men he faced were immense talents, so charismatic that their mere presence could dominate a set. Yet, their clashes over light, height, psychology, or mockery created the hidden dramas and whispered stories that define Hollywood lore. Ultimately, Walker's battles weren't about hating others, they were about refusing to let others define him, to preserve his professionalism and integrity. And sometimes the truth is that people don't hate others for what they do, but for what they make us see about ourselves. The silent wars of Hollywood continue, but the legacy of men like Clint Walker reminds us that presence, patience, and principle can win even against the most formidable egos.